So, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Erev Kodesh, and it is Parsha behaloscha. Favorite Parsha? Most people know that already. Some people don't. Well, famous essay, audio piece of Rav Soloveitchik, like 90 minutes, talks about Moshe, leadership, Bnei Yisrael, Mitzrayim, the whole timeline of the Midbar. If you want to, I'll send you a link to it. It's on YU Torah. It's on Torah Anytime. It's a very substantial piece, and one of my favorite about Torah. I take that back. My favorite piece to talk about. Okay, but we're not going to talk about it today. Well, maybe not. So the beginning of the parsha starts off behaloscha and the Neros, and the question is why we're talking about the Neros here. The menorah. It's been a year. Aaron already knows to do this every day. And next 39 years, it's not like a one-time thing. So what's the kesher with lighting the menorah literally in the middle of going to Eretz Yisrael, literally in the middle of the travels? We talked about this in Tetzaveh, talked about this in Truma. So there's a medrash that says that after the Nisim, the karbanos of the Nisim of the Jewish people, Aaron feels bad. Aaron feels, well, Sheva Levi didn't have a turn. That's not fair. And maybe it was my fault. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe because I led or participated in the ego. Maybe it's my fault that Levi doesn't have a shot at this. It felt pretty bad. So Hashem says to Moshe, tell Aaron that Shalcha, yours is greater. What you're doing is greater than what they're doing. They're bringing a carbon once. You're going to be doing the menorah forever. Okay, shine. The problem was, it's not really true, because the Beis was destroyed, so was the aharon was also put away. So you can't say that, karbanos will be gone, menorah still going to happen. So that's a question that the Ramban tackles. Yeshon brings that answer as the question as well. And he kind of references that, well, we're really talking about the menorah with Hanukkah. That didn't go away. So what Aaron was doing in the Mishkan, it didn't go away. It kind of changed into the light of the menorah of Hanukkah, and that stays forever. And Ramban goes pretty high on that, talks about the greatness of it, the light, or a Torah, fantastic. The Sir Shalom has a few interesting takes on this, but one point he kind of says is the take on what yours is better than theirs. Shalcha is better than shalahem. Menorah better than karbanos. So what does that even mean? So the Sir Shalom says there's two sides of a mitzvah, and sometimes mitzvahs have really different parts to it. There's a mitzvah that's totally l'shem shemayim. Then there's mitzvahs that are l'shem shemayim and guf related. So l'shem shemayim, for example, talks about chanoch, hal chanoch chesolakim veinenu. That chanoch in Bereshis was a big tzaddik. Everything was for Hashem. No guf, nothing physical at all spiritual. And then there's mitzvos that are really part guf and part neshama. Like a korban, for example. A korban, most korbanos, someone's eating that korban, or there's some benefit to it. Even in Ola, the Kohen doesn't eat from it, but the skins from it, the oros, the Kohen gets. And a chatas, the Kohen eats. A toda, the owner eats. Shlamim, the owner eats. Pesach, obviously, the people eat. So some mitzvos, like we said, are old spiritual, machshava, and some mitzvos have a little bit of guf to it. So the Sir Shalom says, when Moshe says to Aaron, yours greater than theirs, was the point is, their mitzvah is not 100% spiritual. It's a physical part of this. Yours is totally spiritual. Menorah is totally spiritual, which is why, also reference that my Charusa Mark mentioned is menorah, Hanukkah. You can't enjoy it. Why not? What's the big deal? Why can't you enjoy it? You can't enjoy it. Sukkah, we enjoy the Sukkah. Why can't you enjoy the lights of menorah? Because that is a total spiritual experience, nothing for myself. So too here, the mitzvah that Aaron was doing was totally a spiritual piece, and that's greater than the other mitzvah, which is a korban. Because a korban, or any mitzvah that has a physical side, can be perverted. Literally, it can be changed into, it's a siyum, but they're really going to pig out. So the spiritual part is kind of small and the physical part is kind of huge. Or sukkah, for example. It's a mitzvah, but if you do things that are not appropriate in the sukkah, then you turn a spiritual experience to a really physical experience. And that's kind of what goes against really what we're saying here, that the mitzvah, there's two sides of it, and the truth is that even a spiritual mitzvah, there's also a chance of making it physical as well. For example, someone who learns a certain sefer, and now all of a sudden everyone's impressed by him, and he kind of says, oh, I know this better than you, and he gives a chabura, and he's trying to really have it covered for himself. So not only do we have mitzvahs that are physical, that could be turned physical, bad, but also mitzvahs that are totally spiritual could also be turned the wrong way. And that's why the Torah says by Aharon it's a shvach, the lo shina. He didn't change anything. And the question is, how are you changing something? You're lighting the candles. There's no changing. You're not gonna, put marshmallows on it. Like, what's mean? Great, he didn't change it. No, the point is the approach to it. That, again, only Aharon could do this. Other kabbanos, Aharon, children could do it, a karban. Anyone could slaughter a karban. But when Aharon was the only person to do this for 40 years, to light the menorah, lo shina, he didn't change his approach to it. Never any gaiva, gaius, nothing for him, only for Hashem, only for what Hashem said to him. He was an eved, never changed his approach. And it's something that's also, I think, very difficult for myself or most people. You're good at something, even a spiritual thing. You give a Gemara, you give a shir. Look at me, I know the Kliyaka better than this guy. I know Sir Shalom, I know Pri Tzaddik better than this guy. And there's a little bit of gaiva attached to it. And the point is, no, Aharon didn't change it. And the point is to be humble. It's a chus to learn Torah. It's chus to understand it. It's chus to teach Torah. And that's one of the lessons that lo shina, that even a mitzvah that's all ruchnius, which I would think is only a spiritual thing, there really is a chance to change it. But Aharon didn't change for that. And this kind of really throws into the second piece, which is really the crux of the parasha, of making this balance of spiritual and physical, where that lies. We have one of the saddest events that changed Jewish history is the Misavim, the people that wanted meat, bichanum basar. And everyone's like, well, they had animals. They could have slaughtered their own animals. Also, they had the maan, which took care of them. It was perfect food. They didn't have to go to the bathroom. They didn't have to eat so much, eat a small amount. They were full. So we always have this question as far as what was the sin. And Sir Shalom says, what's the big deal? It's not usser to eat meat. Having steak at a good restaurant, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not usser. It's not. They weren't asking for treif meat. They weren't asking for chazer. What's the big deal? And the point is, the path that they were going to Eretz Yisrael, to kind of want more and want more and want more, was against them, what they're supposed to do. People in Eretz Yisrael, trying to purify themselves to be able to get, they got the Torah, eating the maan, Eretz Yisrael, leaving off the land, and now embracing Shechina, literally living in Hashem's land, a place where there's miracles, a place where we bring karbanos, we're close to Hashem, we're close to Shechina. And for 40 years, having the maan would have brought them to this place where you go to Israel, and you could get by with less because your focus is different. You speak to people making aliyah, very few people say, well, I was in fancy 5 towns, I'm going to Beit Shemesh because there's a lot of money there. You don't hear that. Some people try to keep their job or they get an Israeli job, and you could survive with a little bit less money. They pay you less tuition, less healthcare, whatever that is. But really, no one says, I'm going to really, good idea, I'm going to make a fortune there. I couldn't make it in Staten Island. I'm going to really, be a multimillionaire. Yeah, you don't hear that so often. It's kind of like, I like Eretz Yisrael, we can live a little bit plainer, and enjoy the life, enjoy what Eretz Yisrael offers, enjoy living here. And that's kind of what the game plan was. Because you look at Dayenu, maan, we have Shabbos, who's Eretz Yisrael, Beis Hamikdash, and that's the kiva, and that's the approach. What the maan was supposed to do for us is to get us that approach. Live less, live more or less. You're satisfied with that, and that's exactly what the maan was. When you collected more, you collected less. It was an omer's worth. Whether it was a baby, whether it was a big dude who's three bills, whether 160 something, same amount. Everyone ate the same exact amount. And that's kind of really the lesson. How we're supposed to live our lives, not just Israel, but even in fancy five towns. Whatever you have, that's what you're supposed to get. That's your game plan. Rosh Hashanah, X amount, and hopefully the year we don't spend. We spend tzedakah, and we have at the end of the year we have exactly what we're supposed to have, and nothing gets destroyed. No big expenses with the car or the house. They're supposed to get. So we kind of live in those lanes. But the people, they didn't want that. Even though they had the maan and exactly what they're supposed to have, this taiva that they wanted to feel, that they want to have more, and they're always striving for more, and enough isn't enough, and there's no limit to this. And they literally ate themselves to death. They ate the slav until it was coming out of their noses, and they literally died from it. Whether Hashem killed them or they died from it, either way we can go with this. The slav was very oily food. It's possible that they literally died of overeating. Okay, and that's exactly the opposite of Eretz Yisrael. That's kind of really what this parsha talks about as well. So we started off with talking about Aharon, who took a spiritual mitzvah and kept it spiritual. And this parsha, the other part of the parsha, is people that have things to eat and had spiritual food, but chose to really approach the physical side of things and no limits. And that not only caused some of them to die, but it caused the entire generation not to make Eretz Yisrael. As Moshe knows, these people aren't going to make it. And we see it in a couple of weeks, next week. That's that kachaya. They weren't ready to live on miracles. They weren't ready for this. They weren't ready to totally trust in Hashem. They weren't ready to trust in Moshe. They want to rely on themselves and their own strength, their own meat. And they end up wanting to send malachim, meraglim, and the rest is history. The rest is history. So we trust in Hashem. We have one approach. We don't trust in Hashem. We trust in ourselves. Then we kind of have safek. We're not sure about things. And we have to do things that maybe are not in the realm of the real modus operandi really we're supposed to do. And in closing, today's T4, today's Rambam Yomi is Pidyon Ben. So usually I listen in the morning to Rabbi Gordon Zatzal from California, originally from Newark, New Jersey. So today in Pidyon Ben he actually quoted a Dvar Torah from his father, which is pretty interesting. That I think is really apropos. He talks about this interesting mitzvah of Pidyon Ben, but what's strange about it is the fact that the Kohen says to the father, Bincha, Bechori or Chamesh Shlaim. So we always say, okay, so the Kohen says, you want your son or you want 5 shlam? And everyone is supposed to hopefully say, I want my son. So they give the Kohen the 5 shlam, and the Kohen gives the baby and Shema Yisrael. But it's a strange question because no one's really going to say, wait, 5 shlam? The silver's really high today. That's at least $100. Let me take that. No one does that. So the question's a little bit silly. So Rabbi Gordon, Gordon quotes his father and says, it's a different approach. It's a different question. It's Bincha, Bechori, or Chamesh Shlaim. How are you raising your son? How are you doing this? Is he Bechori? Are you raising him that he should be eventually the Bechar who's going to work in the Beis HaMikdash, a Bechar that has responsibility, a Bechar that's going to lead the family in spiritualness and do great things, God willing, Shech comes to the Beis HaMikdash? Or Slam, or your kid's going to be raised just to chase the dollar all the time. And that's an interesting insight. I just heard this literally about 2 hours ago. How we approach ourselves and the way we treat ourselves and approach life is the way our kids are going to do it. Are we always, out on calls, trying to make an extra buck, flying only business, changing our flights just to do fancy vacations, all that stuff, fancy cars, all that stuff, or their moderation. You know what? There's time for that, and there's time for Torah. And how do our kids see us? Do our kids see us always working? Or do our kids see us going to a shiur, making eating with Torah, making that a priority in our lives, not just learning Torah, but teaching Torah and teaching our children Torah? That's hopefully the lesson we get from this parsha, is how we kind of look at Ruchnis, look at Gashmias, and look at that balance. How do we balance our ruchnius, that we're really doing it l'shem shemayim, and our gashmis? Are we just chasing it, insatiable, no end, or do we have limits in place, knowing that the real goal in life is to kind of put limits, mitzamtzem, to kind of limit ourselves in the gashmis, so then we can focus on things that are important. Kadosh Baruch Hu and Eretz Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom.